Are you overwhelmed by the challenge of personalizing communication for thousands of students? That's where Element 451's AI assistants come in. From nudging prospective students to guiding those already on their journey, AI assistants don't just automate. They write, build, and optimize every step of your digital campaigns. Discover how at element451.com/AI team.
It seems so obvious, but when you restrict access to the institution's support mechanisms to traditional working hours, and then you serve students that work during those hours or are supporting their family during those hours, and then you wonder why they don't contact you then.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your Monday morning energizer covering insights and trends in higher ed marketing and enrollment. I'm Mallory Wilsey, bringing over 15 years of ed tech and marketing expertise to your earbuds.
And I'm Seth Odell, joining the Pulse with my own adventures from leading marketing at top universities to founding Kanahoma, one of the industry's fastest growing digital marketing agencies.
Each week, we bring you the kind of insider insights you typically only find over cocktails with your pals at a conference.
It's fast, it's fun, and it's designed for you, the busy higher ed professional.
You're not just listening to another podcast.
You're checking the pulse of higher education.
Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher ed professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Seth, I am on cloud 9 today. Listeners, I don't know if you caught it, but Element 451 recently announced a $175 million strategic investment from PSG, a growth equity firm that is going to accelerate AI adoption in higher ed admissions and student success. And I mean, really, I could not be more overjoyed about this investment.
Congratulations, Mallory, and to the whole team. It's unbelievably exciting and incredible. It's wild what's been built, and I'm just so impressed. I'm not sure everybody knows, but Kanahoma is an agency partner with Element 451, so we're tightly tied to y'all. We're very familiar with a lot of your tools, with a lot of your approach, the strategy, but also the talent and the time that's been put in to get to where you all are. You're extremely thoughtful, but you're also relentless in what you build and how you drop it and how deep and thoughtful it goes. I've been just so impressed. And to think what can be done at the next wave to accelerate things further is wild when you combine the acceleration rate of AI already with the acceleration rate for Element 451 in this new chapter. So with sincerity, congrats to everyone involved. Milestone moment. Really, really cool to feel like I've been on the sidelines watching this whole thing play out. It's just so awesome to see.
It has been just incredible the last couple weeks. And Artis, our CEO, I think he said it best, Element 451 was built for this moment. We have been investing in AI first technology for more than 5 years. Our customer growth since 2021 is over 340%. And, listeners hear it from me every week. AI-powered tools are going to help to deliver the kind of persistent and personalized attention that brings real success to our institutions. And this partnership with PSG is going to accelerate that mission. And it is just they are an incredible growth equity firm. They partner with software and tech-enabled service companies to really help navigate this kind of transformational growth and help build stronger teams. And so I think 2025 is going to be a really bright year, not just for Element's customers, but for those of us who work for the company. If listeners aren't watching, if they're just listening, right? The grin on my face is huge, and I really haven't been able to take that smile off in weeks.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm just so impressed and so excited. Y'all are at the right place at the right time and the right people to lead this kind of thing. So it's going to be really, really fun to see what comes next.
It is. And so a special congrats to Artis, who has been relentlessly building this for more than 5 years. But as we pivot, Seth, into today's topic, actually, I love that I was able to share this announcement, which is very AI focused, because today's topic is around this idea of the invisible student and how we can continue to address equity for these populations from admissions all the way through graduation. And, we're calling the invisible student like the student who often goes unnoticed. And that's not to say there isn't real work being done on campus already in these areas, but part-time learners, first-gen college students, people who are balancing full-time work or family responsibilities or just like simply don't fit the traditional student mold, like they can often go unnoticed. And while our colleges and universities have made a lot of strides in recruitment efforts, I think it's clear from some of the data that's out there supporting these at-risk students to persistence and graduation is still an area where our institutions can improve. And we know that when these students are unsupported, dropout rates increase, and that leads to a lot of wasted potential and increased financial burdens on them and their families without the benefits of a degree. So we're going to talk about this today. We've got some data to show why this really matters and to help set the stage. But then we're going to focus the majority of this conversation on solutions. And, no surprise here, but I do think AI has a role to play.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the conversation. At the highest level, as I always tell people that, non-traditional learners are the majority of learners in the U.S. market. And so it's interesting we call them non-traditional when they're actually the majority of the market is adult, returning, over the age of 23 and or juggling work and family. And so I think so often we don't always see the whole student and understand all of their needs, especially outside of their role as a student, but like what are the needs within their lives, the things that they're bringing. And I think in particular it can be invisible sometimes in how we design and develop our products themselves. And so I'm just excited for the conversation to unpack it a little bit and talk about where we think things can be addressed ideally through technology and in other capacities to try to help close the gap for completion for more people and just increase the probability that improved education leads to improved quality of life.
Absolutely. And a few weeks ago, we went through the State of the State, which was your keynote at the AI Engage Summit back in October. And you talked about a lot of the shifting demographics that are taking place in higher ed, from undergraduate enrollment declines and like the balance that part-time students face when they have full-time work in front of them, and the economic pressures as well. And, go back and listen to that episode, folks, if you haven't, because a lot of that sets the stage for this conversation. But I would add to that, overall graduation rates, like only 62% of students at four-year institutions graduate within 6 years. And those rates are lower for minority students, first gen, and those from low-income families. And when students don't graduate, it compounds the student debt crisis. So all of these things are intertwined. And you said it yourself, Seth, like the student loan debt has surpassed $1.7 trillion, and 11% of borrowers are in default. So like these are, the higher default rates among those who did not complete their degrees too.
Well, and I think that's where like the completion rates are always going to be a key conversation, because the reality is there's 40 million Americans with some form of credit and no credential, meaning that they started school and didn't finish. And for them, it hopefully is paid for, but for many it is not, and they're carrying debt. And what they're not getting is the economic benefit and boon that comes from a degree, which even while the role of a degree is waning as far as consumer confidence, the data still shows, in particular, like in states like I'm in California, that having a degree does increase your economic mobility pretty significantly. The benefits are actually still there from a financial perspective, by and large. And so we know that for students that have not finished, it's a huge challenge. And, I think we know you're never going to get to 100% graduation rate. We understand that students don't finish for a variety of reasons. Oftentimes they're related to things in their lives that are totally outside of the control of the institution. But the question then is what is within our control, and are there aspects or areas of what we do that could be altered, addressed, or updated to close that gap to ensure that we are not the ones contributing to the gap in completion. And so where do we start with that? I feel like we got to unpack that and dive in somewhere.
Absolutely. And, I'll just throw a couple more stats out there. The students who are more likely to drop out oftentimes are those first-gen students. In fact, they're 3.5 times more likely to drop out compared to peers who have parents with a bachelor's degree. And first-gen students are about a third of the college student population, right? So that is a really critical area that we can have an impact around. We also know that students age 25 and older make up about 40% of the undergrad population. And these are those non-traditional students that you're referencing who are balancing responsibilities with education, work, family. 26% of them are raising children. So these invisible students, whatever you want to call them, like these at-risk populations, they have a significant impact on the health of the nation, let alone the health of our institutions.
Well, and I think in particular, when you look at like first generation students, which do have a harder time with completion, I think, one of the questions to ask is and understand why. And it makes a lot of sense that if you're first in your family to go to school, you don't necessarily have the same information that you have coming from a family that maybe has more educational experience. And it's exciting to see institutions that are doing work to break that down, because like, what are the barriers for first generation students? It could be a historical knowledge or familiarity overall with even just like how college works, which comes down in oftentimes to like how we're organizing information and communicating on our websites and how we're making that information accessible. But also language is a huge issue. So for many first generation students, especially the traditional undergraduate level, may come from families where a parent is not primarily, like English isn't their first language. And so like there's institutions that I know of and that we've worked with before that do, for instance, like Spanish speaking open houses or financial aid overview nights. I'm excited to think about how AI and technology can allow language translation to be done more seamlessly, not just across the website, but across like all materials that we have. I don't know, I have a lot of experience doing, can we translate these flyers into Spanish because we still use this flyer at some recruiting event? And it's like the idea of like, how can we make language not a barrier anymore by leveraging technology across all of the touch points that we have to ensure that there's not a touch point where someone isn't able to access the information they're looking for, which would help them inform a stronger decision and hopefully allow them to at least come in at a place where they feel like they're understanding, fully what they're looking for and they're getting what they need and that all needs are met. So all needs are met. So I don't know, that's an area in particular that I'm curious and interested about.
So let's talk solutions. And I've already said it, I do believe an AI first proactive approach is required. And I think I have kind of 4 reasons for that. The first is that it helps us to anticipate challenges, right? It allows us to more early detect and intervene before students reach a crisis point. 2, it allows us to personalize their education. So that helps tailor support and the resources to enhance their engagement and overall success. 3, it allows us to expand access. So that 24/7 availability of AI tools ensures that the support is accessible to every student, regardless of their schedules. And then 4, it allows us to make better decisions that are actually driven by data. We talk about that a lot, but are we really doing it? And AI analytics and the insights it can provide can help us recraft policies and allocate our resources more effectively.
Yeah, there's a concept in learning called just-in-time resources, which is the idea that at the point that a student needs support, are they able to get those resources right away? So it's often most found talked about more like within an LMS environment. What I'm excited about on the AI side is thinking about how just-in-time resources can be deployed across the entire student experience. When I was at Southern New Hampshire University, by the time I left, we had over 1,000 admissions advisors, and we had them based in New Hampshire, but also in Arizona, and we had folks working late hours and weekends. because, it was just like so obvious, but it was a lesson, which was that, homework by and large wasn't due till Sundays because the classes were a week long, but the staff was disproportionately Monday through Friday. But if you have stuff due on Sunday, and you know that a lot of your students are working, and a portion of those are working traditional 9-to-5 jobs, a lot are doing their homework on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And so what happens when they run into a question or an issue where they want to connect with a faculty member, or they're running into a technical issue and they want IT support because there's a technical issue with uploading a file or accessing within the LMS, or they want to talk to their advisor because they're struggling, they're not sure, they could be at a point where they may be reconsidering the class. There's all these questions. It's like, well, where are all those resources at the point that the student needs them? Because so often it's, well, we're open from 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. And so, at Southern New Hampshire, they solved that through a staffing plan, which was very aggressive. People work nights and weekends, and they had all these rotations. But the idea that technology can solve a lot of that as well, and the idea that you can have 24/7 AI agent tutors available for you, or advisors available for you, or financial aid for you, it seems so obvious, but when you restrict access to the institution's support mechanisms to traditional working hours, and then you serve students that work during those hours or are supporting their family during those hours, and then you wonder why they don't contact you then. It's because their lives don't provide them that opportunity. And so can we provide an equal level of support to all students at all times, regardless of the point of need? To me, I think that is actually achievable within the next couple of years. I mean, I think it's actually technically achievable today. The idea of implementing it fully might take longer, but that to me is probably the biggest area, is that we're not meeting students at the point of need with the level of service that they need. And I do think that can change quite soon. I'm really excited about the possibilities there.
Yeah, your use case is excellent. AI-powered virtual agents or advisors, whatever you want to call them, will also have a big impact in, things that are even maybe simpler, just simple like event registration or financial aid queries. I was talking to an advancement audience recently, and, about just even how an alum who wants to come back for homecoming and is, similarly probably making their travel plans on a Saturday or a Sunday, but might have some key questions, right? Well, your alumni engagement staff are not in the office on Saturday or Sunday afternoon. And so that kind of, yes, real-time ability to answer questions when the person on the other end actually wants to get them answered, I think that is the clearest use case. Trinity Valley Community College is actually a great case study on this. They have 4 people in their enrollment services office. And I know Courtney Skyle as well. She's their director. TVCC is a rural institution, and they are very much like their population is the population that we are talking about. They have a big focus of community college students who are working full time. And so they have integrated AI assistants fully over the course of the last couple of years. And it is allowing them, to our point, to have that 24/7 always on virtual assistant. And what it's doing is, helping with messaging based off of behavioral triggers, proactively identifying students who are at risk for not re-enrolling. And they were able to increase their spring 2023 graduating class by 18% because of AI. Yes.
Wow. That
it works
hugely. Yeah. Well, and I think that's where it's like I think looking at this in categories is important. There's a student learning and experience section. There's obviously a financial aid section. There's also an understanding of just pure customer service, and just meaning like that availability piece, which we talked about, which is like what is available when, and also how, meaning like, do you have to call? Can you text? Can you chat? What are all the options you can have to email to communicate? On the flip side, I think there's also a whole category about like product restrictions that people need to understand. Like it's really unfortunate to me that in 2024, there's still issues where if students are taking like a graduate program that's built on a string, meaning you take one course after the other, that if they take a term off, it can be difficult for them to get back in. So like, a lot of institutions use more of a stacked carousel model where, at any given term within your program, you could take one of a certain number of programs. So that way, if you take a term off and you try to come back, there is a course available for you. It always breaks my heart when I hear of situations where a student takes a term off because of a life event or something significant that happens to them that is outside of the control of the institution. But what's in the control of the institution is when they're ready to come back, is the course that they need available at the term that they need. And it's not always the case. And so I do think we also have to step back and be like, are there fundamental flaws in our product strategy as far as how we're offering these programs that aren't meeting students' needs? We're still seeing that even in like online asynchronous programs because they're still term-based. And so, there's a movement obviously in competency-based education and self-paced, but by and large, that's still tied back to the credit hour. And so we're not quite at a place where like education is truly on demand and you can pick up and stop where you need to. But, the reality is many students are going to need to take a break. And one of the things I've been told by a friend of mine who's a very senior advisor at a large online institution was like, you have to do everything you can to try to like make sure the student doesn't take a break. Not because they don't need it, but because statistics show if they take even a one course break, the likelihood of them graduating just falls off. And it's like, that's just really unfortunate. Now, some of that is outside of control, but some of it's within ours. And it's, to me, a key area we got to look at is that for students that do step back from their programs, how are we making it seamless for them to step back in?
Yeah. Well, Seth, any final thoughts on this topic before we wrap up today's episode?
I will say the last thing I'll say is that when we think about AI tools in this area, one of the things that's been promising to me is that AI tools have been more affordable than I thought they would be. There's a lot of solutions that are being offered for thousands of dollars, not tens of thousands of dollars, and certainly not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I think that's really important because there's no area in an industry that can have a bigger impact on students that are non-traditional than community colleges, but community colleges are often the most under-resourced, and so they're not in a position to go spend millions of dollars on some elaborate new tech stack. And the reality is that the entry point for many of these opportunities is actually much more cost-effective than I thought it would be, and that's really exciting. And so that's just one that I would highlight is that, if community colleges can thrive in an environment like this in the future, then I know we're doing something right because they are such a critical component of our industry and our communities. But again, so often under-resourced, so it's difficult for them to implement cost-prohibitive solutions. And so I'm excited that it doesn't appear that all these solutions are going to be cost-prohibitive. And I think that's something that gives me a lot of hope.
Yes, I co-sign that for sure. And I will end this episode, Seth, with the same question I asked you last week. How are those paper cranes coming?
Not again! You did it again? Mallory! How could you do that to me twice?
You said ask me next week. I'm just saying.
I did. I forgot. Oh, don't ask me next week. How about that? Don't.
Anyone who's not watching the video, Seth's face is bright red right now.
I'm embarrassed because I say what I do and I do what I say, and I honor my commitments, and yeah.
We gotta hold each other accountable, Seth. If we don't, who will?
It's a work in progress. It is a work in progress. Oh, you got me again.
All right, friends. We'll catch you next week, and we won't pick this wound again. All right, bye-bye, everyone. The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.